Anyway,
So,
Daniel, what do you think of that?
It sucks, Roger. No.
Okay,
No.
pull the plug.
No, dude, the whole thing is about, I don't know if who saw it in the Slack, but me and our consultant had a long conversation last night. And, it's something I want to stress to all of us because, when we get on the phone together or we're in Slack together, there is the camaraderie that we're all experiencing. And, of course, in the wee hours of the night, all of us have those second guesses and those, what are we doing? If worst case scenario happens, this could happen or this could happen. And it's ironic because each of us are having those moments where it's like, okay, what if something bad happens? And, especially with the skerfuffle with the C's packages this week, which we'll address. But it's like I told the two of them, I said, look, I have those moments too in the middle of the night when nobody's around where I second guess what's happening, what I'm involved in, and then I have to really find my center and say, are we doing the right thing? Well, we are doing the right thing. And I just believe that when you do the right thing, the universe or God or divine providence or whatever is working to put everything that you need right in front of you. And, I mean, just the fact that all of us are coming together in this way is a testament to that. And we are doing the right thing. And this is much, much bigger than cannabis. I mean, I know all of us are affected by this. I lost a father that would still be here if CannaSense was around in 2011. He would still be here with me playing poker every weekend. Okay, so it's personal to me. Our consultant lost his mother, and she could have been saved by cannabis. Every one of us is touched by this. Either it saved us or the lack of access to it made us lose somebody that we cherish. And so all of this is coming together. When all of us are liberty people, and we look at the founding fathers, and they talk about this divine providence of pulling the Constitution together and pulling the Revolution together, and how, there is absolutely no doubt that some divine hand is playing a part in that, and I think that same divine presence is surrounding us. And, the main thing is the biggest hurdle that I think that we face, and it's not even going to be a huge hurdle for us, is the stereotype and the stigma that comes along with cannabis use. This isn't about getting high. This isn't about, just smoking pot. This is about real people with real medical issues that need this medicine. And because it cuts to the core of what the Bill of Rights is about, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which includes your well-being, it's fundamentally revolutionary. And, with the way that CannaSense had been prior, it was founded by liberty people, and it was, for the most part, being operated by liberty people, but we all saw that the message got away from liberty. And our job is to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I think with the group that we have here and the resources that we're pulling together, that we are not going to let the main beating heart of this, which is the Bill of Rights, which is liberty, get away from us. So, in my opinion, this is a vehicle, and that this vehicle is going to allow us to make so many changes in this country. So, sorry to go on a rant there, but
no, it's all tied together, and you're right. And this new asset that Greg is bringing into the fold on this call this weekend is somebody who is tweaked and peaked, knows it can turn out articles and, like you said, 5-page research papers at the drop of a hat, and has been doing this for many, many years. It's all good. It is.
Yeah,
so, okay.
I just want to say something quick because I've been listening to the conversation, just to introduce the rest of the people that probably may not know us and what we stand for. For one thing, everything we do is under fundamental principles. And I'm going to tell you right now, the Constitution doesn't give them any authority to do anything they're doing, and that's where we rest.
Okay.
And all the paperwork that we will write, they will not be able to address because they can't answer it. As long as you stick to the fundamental principles, they can't answer it. So that's the best place to be in your fight. They're not, and the reason that you want somebody doing things the way we do them is because we're not lawyers. They don't have control of us. If a lawyer ever put some of the paperwork in the court that we put in, they would pull him off to the side. He'd lose his bar license. Look, he's an officer of the court, and they control him. They don't control us.
All right.
And the truth will prevail as long as somebody proclaims it, and that's what we do. Look, I worry about this whole medical thing, and as far as asking permission, it's a trap. They tell you, yes, we're going to legalize it. Well, what does legalize mean? I know in Colorado they say, oh, you get a card and this and that. Yeah, you get a card, and you can use it medically until they say you can't. Or the other thing they do is they say you can't own a gun, you can't even do this, and you can't do that. How's that? There needs to be no restrictions because they don't have the right to put restrictions on.
All right.
So,
this is Gerard talking?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
All right. And we have, who else?
We're never going to.
John G., I'm listening.
Okay. So I just wanted to state that we're very straightforward and we're very fundamental in what we do, and that's kind of where you need to be. Once you start discussing the little nitty-gritties of the other things, all you do is give credibility to their fiction, which then
I disagree with you, Gerard, on one point. It's not where we kind of got to be. It's where we absolutely need to be. Because
we're there. I just want to make sure.
I know that. And had I not known that you and John and the rest of NLA work on fundamental principles, you wouldn't be here. You guys do the best of any organization I've run across, and you all know damn right well I got my feelers out everywhere. There is no organization on the internet like NLA. It doesn't exist.
All right. Who else do we have from NLA? Gerard, is John here?
Okay, I'm here, John, and Gerard, and I hear Roger. Who else is on the line? I'd like to know myself. How many people do we have online?
All right, I'm Daniel, so I'm here.
And Greg.
How you doing, Daniel?
Roger's here.
And I'm Greg.
Greg's here. Stephanie.
Hello.
Dave.
Yep.
And did we have somebody else chime in?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, so let me
Ron would be the only person we're waiting on.
All right, let me go ahead and get this started before we really dig
Okay, so there are 7 people on the call. All right.
Yeah, before we really dig in deep, I do want to let everybody know this conference call is going to be recorded and sent to our consultant. And all right, Gerard and John, let me go ahead and try to tell you what CannaSense is and how we operate. I know we spoke briefly, but that was about a prior thing, so I want to kind of get you guys caught up to date. Basically, CannaSense was started a few years ago by Liberty people, and essentially the way that it works is within what we call the trifecta. Of course, you guys know that there's more legislation that we do deal with, but basically most of our patients are not liberty-minded. So we have to educate them on liberty. We have to get them educated on the principles in which we do operate. What CannaSense is a 501c3 nonprofit mutual benefit corporation in California. That's what CannaSense is. Now, what we do is we, using the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, which is California legislation, and the reciprocity clause in the Constitution, we reach out to people who are in need of medical cannabis, and we, through telemedicine or the Affordable Health Care Act, look, none of us are fans of it, but it gave us something, so we use it, which is telemedicine. We help patients get to a doctor's appointment in California via the internet with multiple online doctors. We walk them through the process of speaking with a doctor and getting a medical cannabis recommendation in California. Every one of our patients in CannaSense must be verified California patients in order to fall under the Compassionate Use Act. Once we get them in, they essentially get, once we verify their documents, which is their doctor's recommendation and their ID, make sure that that's who they are, they get access to our apothecary. So we want to keep it simple. We do a lot of other things, but let's keep it simple. What we do is we get people the recommendation, and then they get access to our apothecary, and then they get medical cannabis provided to them wherever they're at in all 50 states. That essentially, in a nutshell, is what CannaSense is.
Can you give us a definition of apothecary? What did you say, something?
Apothecary. Yeah.
Apothecary?
That's like a pharmacy. That's like a pharmacy that mixes medicine. Apothecary.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
It's
online dispensary.
Right. It's an online dispensary, but we're careful to use the word apothecary because once you get into their terminology, as you guys know, you're going to have some issues. All right, so basically that's what CannaSense is, and that's the angle that we're coming from. And we wanted to have you guys from the National Liberty Alliance on for quite a few reasons. One, we're all in the liberty movement, but all of us want to get on the same page as far as jurisdiction, the Constitution, how it relates to cannabis, and our operations. So if you could, take about 20 minutes would be pushing it, but take about 15 minutes, whichever one of you want to introduce yourselves to this team of CannaSense people and explain who you are, what you do, and I'll go ahead and give you guys the floor for about 20 minutes.
And if you can do that in 15 minutes, I'm going to kiss your ass on Broadway at high noon and let you sell tickets. But I'm listening.
Well,
go ahead, John.
I think we need a little bit more information. For instance, okay, so you kind of are an online dispensary, and let me take some, assumptions here and what I think what's going on here.
They are a what do you call it? What is it that you started? Not an alliance. No. Get away from that. Originally, you said we all got together as I don't know why I'm having
collective. It's a collective. It's a California collective.
Yeah, but which word he used? It's a
501c3.
Right. No, not what is the 501c3? It's a collection of people, and you got a word that you use in the film all the time there.
We're a non-profit mutual benefit corporation.
Right. What? You call yourself an alliance, not an alliance. You call yourself you set up a mutual beneficial thing, and there was a quote that you used that I thought was very good.
Collective.
Because it doesn't a collective or what? Yeah, you started a collective. Was that the word you used?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Of people that have this, that want this, that have this knowledge. Not just a pharmacy or an apothecary. You are a group of people that have needs and wants and knowledge, and so you've all banded together, so to speak, to push this. So your power in numbers. So you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. I don't know why I'm not getting the word that I want, but it's not. You really don't call yourself an apothecary or a pharmacy per se, because I think that's too narrow of a definition.
Okay, so what we're looking at here, again, I'm trying to understand exactly where you guys are at, how you're structured, what problems or lack of problems are you having with those people who are in power as far as legalities go. But you're a California corporation, well, not a corporation, but a nonprofit, 501(c)(3), and you're in California. In California, this is legal what you're doing as far as they are concerned. The government there, they don't have a problem, and I assume the federal government also, there seems to be no problem operating, at least in California. And I'm going to take it further from there, but at this point, you can legally operate as far as they're concerned, powers that be, if I may, in California, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the federal government doesn't really have a problem, so they're not going to give you a hard time in any state, correct?
I haven't had many problems with that so far, except for in New Jersey, which is a separate topic, however.
Right. Now, how many states have you been doing any kind of business with?
All 50.
So you've been operating all 50 states, and they're aware of you?
Very aware.
Okay, so they're very aware you're operating, and basically what someone does, I presume, is they get on the phone, on the internet, and they will meet someone who is a doctor to talk with them and discuss and get a potential prescription from a doctor in California, correct?
Correct.
And then once they get that prescription, an authorization or whatever you want to call it, but the prescription from the doctor, they then can fulfill it through someone in their state that is selling the product which connects directly to the major corporation out in California. So they have storage houses out here, or do you ship directly from California?
Initially, our initial fulfillment center was in New Jersey. So what a patient would do is they would get their recommendation through one of our caregivers, and they would upload their documents to become a member of our collective, which is a California collective. And then they would order their medicine through our online apothecary, and the medicine was shipped from New Jersey to the patient, regardless of what state they were in. As it stands right now,
via U.S. mail.
Okay, that the federal government has not had a problem with this as far as you're operating within the letter of their statutory processes, I presume, and the same thing, of course, with California. And as far as every other state is concerned, you know, until recently, I guess it's recent, you had a problem with Jersey. What caused that problem? I know there's something you guys had mentioned, that someone had smelled something through an inspection and things went off from there. So this is a local problem, I would presume? Okay, so I understand that. Now, let me ask, this is the key thing, because, you know, government likes you to have their permission, or they want you to not do something without their permission. And when they find out you're doing something without their permission and they haven't put anything down to stop you from doing it, then they go create statutes. So on a federal level, let's just say alone, at this point, is there statutes out there saying you can't do this, that, or the other thing? Or are there statutes out there saying, well, you could do this and you could do that? You know, where are you standing with that? Or is this kind of like a place where they don't really have any rules laid out and you're doing it? And you're just
John, you missed his presentation where he told you what acts and statutes federally he was acting under. Three of them.
Okay, I missed that. Can you give me that?
Why don't you explain to him how you're proceeding on those three particular legs, so to speak, you know, that bring in
the trifecta.
The trifecta. There you go. So explain that to John, because I think.
Okay, so and if you have statute numbers, you know, maybe you can give me that, and let me know if they're federal, California, or what.
Okay, sure. The first and in my opinion, the most important one is the Compassionate Use Act of 1996. That's California legislation. Okay. That it basically sets up, you know, the entire medical cannabis system in California. And it is actually what allots collectives to form in order for to procure the medicine for the members of its collective. So that would be the Compassionate Use Act of 1996. Okay?
Okay, and that's California law or federal?
That is California law.
Okay, the second then.
Okay, the second, by my estimation, would be the Affordable Health Care Act, or Obamacare. And what that did was it opened up telemedicine. And what that basically means is, in the Affordable Health Care Act, a virtual visit or an internet visit to a California doctor is a lawful legal visit to that doctor. So
gotcha.
Through the
that's a move that they made on that end, and I'm sure they had different reasons to make those laws because, you know, but I remember seeing some information on TV about that a couple of years back. Mm-hmm. And so they did kind of put that together, and we're taking advantage of that.
Exactly. So what we're doing, like I'm in Georgia. I don't think any of us are in California except for Greg, but we all are California patients. Everyone on the call has been through this process. So we're all California patients. I think California's legislature last year, re-clarified that you do not have to be a California resident to become a California patient. So therefore, we're using that in conjunction with the Compassionate Use Act. As far as states like Georgia or, you know, wherever we happen to be, we use the reciprocity clause in the Constitution to get full faith and credit for the judicial proceedings and hearings.
Article 4.1, right?
Right.
That's where I was going to go with it. So you have so the third one is Article 4.1.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Okay. Is there another one? Or that's it?
That's the there's plenty of other ones. You guys know that, using Marbury versus Madison, Shuttlesworth versus Alabama.
Right. Now we get into liberty.
But for the masses,
liberty, jurisdiction, and authority.
Right. For the masses of our collective that aren't liberty-minded, we want to keep it simple. And so we focus on the trifecta. However, you know, we do utilize other constitutional laws. So that's basically the framework.
what you're looking at is the Compassionate Act of 1996 in California, as far as California law is concerned, and you're operating within California, which makes sense. I don't know if that was accidental or on purpose. The second thing you're looking at is the federal code that allows you to do what you're doing, and as far as the the affordable health care, what did you call that? Something
telephone,
telemedics or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the third you got is the Constitution, and you're saying now every state. Are you aware of any things in other states? Have you looked into other states and see what other statutes they might have?
Briefly, some of us have, but the linchpin to it is the California Collective. So we
yes,
really
and tying that with Article 4, Section 1, you bring that together, and then you got the federal control over the whole thing. And any problems, you take it to federal court, you should be able to win it.
All right. Well, if you could, like I said, take a few minutes to explain to those on the call who aren't familiar with you what you guys do specifically and where they can find your stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, we basically we're trying to take our country back. People need to be educated. That is a simple problem. As Jefferson said, if the people expect to be ignorant and free, they expect what never was and never will be. So liberty requires education. The idea of wanting to be free and not be controlled by anyone is a very ignorant act, really, or thought, because it's a lot more than that. Liberty is about preserving it and protecting it and taking it. And if people don't use a liberty for a while, people forget that they had that liberty, and then people go up against that liberty, of course, because logically they can't agree with it. Like people who want to use a drug for recreational purposes, for instance. If they don't do it, they don't like that other people do it. But anyway, we're controlled by statutes, and this is a problem across the entire nation. Is being controlled on the state level and being controlled on the federal level. And the only way to take this whole process back is by taking our courts back, and that's why we developed a process for administrations, to develop administrations in every county across America to take our courts back by controlling the judiciary. We control the judiciary by taking control of the courts because we, the people, are the authors of the law for government, so we're above government, and we're controlled by the law of the land, which ultimately is common law. That's the law of God, the law of the Creator. And we're all under that when it comes to criminal activities or any kind of an injury to another person. We fall under that law. Contract law, of course, to some degree we control and we make our contracts up. And government has a certain amount of ability to work on that contract law in certain areas, but only where we gave them that authority in Article 1, Section 8, 9 of the Constitution. So we need, in order to take back the country, we have to take back courts. And if we can control the courts and free the people, and we have true, grand juries and trial juries, then we'll truly have the people consenting to the judiciary. On the political side, which is where we started, and we'll get back to eventually, and we're working on what's called committees of safety, is we're doing the same thing to take back the political side of things. People don't know where these other people come from that run for office and who chooses them. Some people understand the committeeman process, but a lot of them know that it's a corrupt system. Others just don't know they just heard of it, but they don't know what it does. And generally, the people don't realize that they have to take that control back on the grassroots level, where they truly get the vote on an individual level within an election district on who's going to run for office in this party or that party. And we're going to step even further than that.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
John, I have a quick question for you. Is this an agreeable statement to you by what you're saying? This country will never, ever be taken back from the top down. The only way we can ever reclaim our rightful position as the true sovereigns of this constitutional republic is from the grassroots up. It can't happen any other way.
Right. And that requires an education and a new look at everything, because you have to realize that if you want your liberty, you have to permit the guy next to you to have his liberty, even if you disagree with that liberty. He has a right to that, whatever that may be, as long as he doesn't injure another. That's the key to this whole thing. And in certain situations where people are nervous, for instance, the moral side of things, I remember when I was a kid, there was such a law, which seems to have been applied when I was a kid, of corrupting the morals of a minor. That seems to have disappeared in our life. But, that kind of a law is a proper law. It's a common law, as a matter of fact. You can't injure an individual, a child. But in any event, we have to get back to simple freedom, and the people have to do this themselves. Now, we don't have to. The ideal thing is to educate everyone, and that's going to take years to get a general education out there, because that's part of our plan, too, in the future as we move along, is education from the grassroots level, looking into every election districts and working ultimately for a curriculum in schools on the grammar school level. And if you have a proper education, probably 9 years of school is sufficient. That's what a lot of our parents had. If we go back, 50, 60, 80 years ago, their education ultimately they didn't have high schools, generally speaking. They were moving into a higher education at that point. And yet their education was far superior to ours. It wasn't technological, but it was far superior to ours, and they understood civics, they understood the political system, they understood how things work. We don't have that no more. They've robbed us of civics. They've robbed us of the mind of liberty and so on. And that's what we have to take back. And our plan requires about 15,000 people on the judicial level across America in order to take back the judiciary. And the other part of the plan, which is the political side, requires about, we could probably do it in about 50 people per county. I mean, the ideal eventually, you'd get 100 people quite quickly, but 50 people in a county will take back the committeeman process. But by taking back the judicial process, okay, and get the law and order back into the courts, in theory, and actually in fact, really, one person could run for the office correctly, properly, and take over the whole process, not only in their own county, but in their whole state. One person can do that. And because there'd only be one elected committeeman in their state. Right now, we haven't found a state that has any elected committeemen, but they all believe they're elected. And that's a con job, and we can prove that. We have proved that on paper. We just studied the law here in New York. We also discovered this is how it works across the nation. Some groups and areas, they choose their committeemen differently, and in ways that is not lawful, in the sense that you can't have a person living in one a totally different election district, let's say in another town, okay, and be a committeeman within a district within your town. Okay, because that is a conflict. Well, first of all, they don't live in your town. They don't truly represent those people. And often what you find is they don't get elected by those people, which really is on a grassroots level. They have to be elected at the election district. We don't find that at all, although they come very close to looking like that. But let's not get into those nuts and bolts. The bottom line is we need to take back our political process, and then we could put the restrictions on our elected individuals, whether they be on a local level or on a federal level, a state level. If your election district is within that election area for that person, that political subdivision, then you get to cast a vote on whether you're going to walk and accept and support an individual running for office. But now, if we're educated, we can realize we don't let them get into office unless they know the Constitution. So we need to be able to take the consent of our government by controlling our political side and our judicial side. Okay, those are the two keys. Now, with the power and the authority of the people in the grand jury level, they then would have the power to remove anyone from office for not being obedient and keeping their oath, because that would be a crime. We can find even codes that will make that a crime if they act contrary to knowledge of the Constitution. On the political level, we control the committeeman process. The election districts, if they have going to get rid of someone who's a problem, they can do a recall. You don't need statutes to do a recall. Some states have statutes. New York is a state that doesn't have a statute, I believe. But because they don't have a statute doesn't mean you can't do what you have to do, because the people control the consent of their government. So they can recall, and it's already in the law everywhere. It's common knowledge. It's been that way for hundreds of years since America was. It's only required a percentage of votes that take place to pull someone out of office, a percentage of those votes in that election district. And I'm not sure what it is, maybe 10% or something, maybe even less. So
a lot of this based on the precinct set up now.
Exactly. That's the committeeman process, the precincts.
Yes, precinct.
But right now it's controlled by the status quo. The deep state, ultimately. You can link crimes all the way up to the deep state. They control that all. So we're looking to take back the political. We're looking to take back the judicial. And our key thing to all of this is education. and specifically educating the sheriffs. We have a project going there to educate
Very
the sheriffs.
good project.
Once they start applying the law, we will then have our liberty protected on a phone call. We're going down to see our sheriff here in New York next week concerning the SAFE Act. And the question to him, which we understand he's already agreed to, the question to him ultimately, is he going to protect us? Is he with the people or is he with the SAFE Act? So he says he's with us. So now we're going to find out when the state police come to my door and knocking on my door, I'm going to call you up. Are you going to come to tell them to go away? Because they're here to get my guns. And why? Because I'm not going to comply. Well, at least I'm not planning to comply to their paperwork requirements by the state, which makes my gun in my house a political issue and no more a constitutional issue controlled by a constitutional officer. But we want to go one step beyond that. That constitutional officer, which is the sheriff that controls my liberty concerning a weapon, on that should not be in any way tied into a license or a permit. We have to get rid of that too. But the idea is there. He's going to protect our right of Second Amendment. So that's
everything you just said fits perfectly with exactly what we're trying to do with CannaSense and the seizure of packages, so on and so forth.
It's over and over again with every single liberty you can think of, and that's what we're battling. Every single liberty. You win one, you win them all.
All right.
And I've heard you guys say also, and this enters into it. Yes, we understand it has to come from the grassroots, but the reason that we have a chance at getting the grassroots is because of movements like CannaSense, where people actually go out and they exercise their liberty. You just act free and you do exactly what you know that you have a right to, and then we fight them on those fundamental principles that they can't answer when you hold their feet to the fire. They have no authority. If you have enough people that get together and do these things, then you have kind of the Gandhi effect. You know what I mean? So this is what's happening. People are waking up. People have a need, and they understand that this is the answer. So they're more willing to disobey and to do those public disobedience things, and that's what's necessary. So and that way there you have a peaceful revolution as opposed to a bloody revolution. And of course, they want to push it to make things, get out of hand all the time and make everybody look like a radical. But it's already, with the information, with the internet and everything, and that's out there, they're losing the information war. They really are. And so now is the time. I think timing is everything. And I think because of the internet and look, we got help on top with Donald Trump. Regardless, we haven't had anybody on top that we could even. I mean, we don't necessarily have to have him, but right now that makes our job easier. And
I don't think we'd have much of a chance. I mean, look, we have a chance as long as we get critical mass. We're approaching we're not that we're literally approaching critical mass, but we have over 6,500, moving at 7,000 members. For us, at some point, that's going to hit that critical mass. So we're starting to really snowball here. But it has to hit that spark, that spark that's going to ignite the fusion, and get this thing moving and take it back. Now, it could move a lot quicker by having someone like Trump in the White House, and that's where we benefit because we have a springboard off the White House. We may, believe it or not, have a springboard off the the Justice Department with what's his name? Sessions, Jeff Sessions. Okay. Because it looks like he's not going along with Trump. It looks like he's dragging his feet. It looks like he's moving in a different direction. But behind the scenes, it appears that he is working diligently with numerous, and we believe it's in the thousands of indictments that they've been working on. We've heard over 10,000 at this point, and a worldwide movement in that direction to take down the deep state ultimately. Not only here, around the world, because all these other nations are fighting the same problem. But anyway, we're in a good situation with whatever's going on there. We will be able to use what they're doing at some point in time, and I think it's near, as a springboard. And once we get out there to get this thing moving, but we got to get, quite a few thousands of people, I'd say 15, 20 or so thousand people across the nation
And
every state of the union.
John,
and then that's what power is.
How many members did you say that the National Liberty Alliance has? Did you say 7,000?
We have just over 6,500. We're moving towards that 7,000 mark. But let me just let's take the really where the battle's going on right now, which is in Jersey. So that could be as much as a blessing as it is a curse, because it gives us an opportunity to deal with the problem on a state level. And if you win it on one level, you're going to win it on every state level. And that's by taking it into the federal court. Is this in the federal court right now?
No, it's not.
Remember we spoke about this. It's in the state court?
Yes.
Okay, so they have what's called a nisi prius court taking control of this process, okay? And you have the same kind of a thing on the federal side, which is an administrative court. And going into the federal court, you'll be moved into the administrative process of the court. You cannot fight this battle from coming out from a 501c3. Or was that 3C? It was a 501(c)(3), right? Or C3?
Yes.
501c3?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you cannot fight this battle from that kind of a perspective and win it on a common law level. You can only win that on a statutory level. And you might win it on the statutory level, but I would never make my stand on a battle this big on a statutory level. So if they're going after an individual or a corporation or a trust or what in Jersey, who are they going out after in Jersey?
An individual.
Okay, so that's the ideal situation. You need to move that, whether you use people like us to do it or a lawyer. You have to move it into the federal level, and you have a much better chance to win that on the federal level. With a lawyer, a bar attorney, he can only win on a statutory level. With us, we would win ultimately on a common law level, which is constitutional. The bar attorney will not fight this battle on a constitutional level. He'll fight it on a constitutional level only from the standpoint of a statute coming out of maybe U.S. 18 or U.S. 42, which is acting under the color of law. And so that's how he'll make his battle. But he can only push that so far, okay? And the possibility of defeat is there, but probably pretty low. Now, I don't know if you'll get a lawyer to challenge the jurisdiction of the court, and that's the key here. Because you have to move it into federal court, challenging the jurisdiction and making the case that you're not getting due process. And you can make that case very easy before a federal judge by just laying out the process, the procedure, and then the administration of that court system in New Jersey. And that should be a pretty simple task, okay? But now you have to make the battle on that level. And they will only battle these things on a statutory level using U.S. codes, like I said, 18 and 42, but they won't go too far into the Constitution. Where we would make our case, we'd appease them on making a filing for cause of action combined with a statute, which is what they like to see. They won't let it come through without a statute. So we'll give them their statute, but we're also going to tie in the Constitution, our liberty, our unalienable rights to this. And when you tie that argument in there, then you make your argument before the court for jurisdiction of that court, to take jurisdiction, to be in a proper jurisdiction, and challenge the jurisdiction of the Jersey court, and force the federal court or move the federal court to shut down the state court from going forward with their case for lack of due process. And you can win that on the federal district court right there in Jersey.
All right, excellent. Another thing that I kind of want you guys to do for everyone who's on the call is really I want you to focus on the reciprocity clause in the Constitution and explain it. Just unbox the reciprocity clause in conjunction with what we're doing with cannabis.
Okay, you're talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's talking to you. He wants you to explain reciprocity.
Okay.
Reciprocity clause.
Well, look, we know.
Simple.
Basically, you're looking. You got to be looking at Article 4, right? Section 1, full faith and credit.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. Basically, the fact that anything that's legal in one state, that's constitutional in one state, has to be constitutional in another state. They have to accept it. And if it gets challenged, it can only be challenged on the United States Supreme Court level. But we're beyond that, because we don't need the United States Supreme Court to give us approval or disapproval. They're not our masters either. They're not the deciders of the law. We are. we decided what law government can apply against us when we wrote the Constitution. Yeah. Article 1 is the key to that. And nowhere will you find that we've given them permission to control our medical health, our behavior, what we do for recreation, or anything. But we've left that totally between the individual and God, and therein is the true, experiment of liberty. Can we do it? Is man a social enough, moral enough person to be able to, have that liberty and live with each other? And of course they can, because it's been proven already. We've even got some videos proving that man is a social person, a social being, and will automatically conform and yield to each other in order to get along because they desire society. That's the nature of us. Mm-hmm. And so we can do this.
I just wanted to say also that there's been plenty of Supreme Court rulings, and as far as what they're legislating and ruling on, that they cannot diminish our rights in their legislation. They can only increase them. So anytime they throw something in there that diminishes our rights, right away it's unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court has ruled on that. And like John says, they're not our rulers, but we'll take anything that they ruled on that helps us. That just more.
Well, we use them to control the courts.
Right.
We use them to control the courts. We don't use them to win the case, although we do that also, of course, because we lay the position of logic out, which brings us to liberty. And collectively, anything that builds upon liberty, supports liberty, and that's of course what we're talking about. The United States Supreme Court has huge numbers of very good rulings that we use all the time. I mean, now they're trying to corrupt it. They've been trying to corrupt it for years, but they seem to be getting pretty good results most of the time. Once in a while they get it wrong. But we can nullify it, you see, because, the only time the application of the United States Supreme Court is applied upon an individual is when they go into the courts and make a contract argument and not exercise a common law court, which is a court of record. And that's the whole difference, okay? So, the courts, they're either coming into a court that's really going to act as given the authority to a judge to make a decision that has an appellate process, okay? Or you're going to have a jury who's going to make the decision, and there isn't, and they got the power of jury nullification, and there is no appeal to that. And because that's the true law of the land. And all you have to do is lay out liberty to the individual and connect it to the liberties that they love as much as anyone else. In other words, reason with them. You can build a case and win it every time. The other thing, of course, is, again, this is why it's so important to control the orientation of the court, that is, the administration of the court, where we get to orientate the individuals who are going to be grand jurists and trial jurists, to make sure they understand the concepts and the principles of common law, that for every injury there must be a remedy. Forget about, having to go through certain hoops in order to get into a court, if you can show an injury, you deserve a remedy in a court of justice. The other thing is the simplicity of an argument in court. If you come in with an affidavit, that's all it takes to get a case open. You don't have to file or go through all the paper process. Of course, you got to notify the other side. So these are the simple things to get into a court. But the bottom line is, without an injury, there is no crime. Without an injured party, there is no crime. And that's where we need, if they can't show an injured party in Jersey, then there is no crime. Now, for someone to use something which isn't really, we don't have this kind of a problem with pot, where people kill themselves on pot. Maybe with heroin they do. But nevertheless, we sell rat poison. If someone wants to drink that, they can't hold you responsible because you sold it to them. You don't want to sell it to a child, of course. They have those laws, but that's about it. So the same thing with this. Again, it frees up liberty, and that's where you got to get to. And that should be a pretty simple case. But, again, you have to get the courts back under the consent of the people. As a Declaration of Independence we read, we have government by consent. The grand jury, the trial jury consents to the judicial process. The committeemen, the people on the grassroots level, consent to the political process, and both have the power and the authority to remove anyone from office. One can be done in a day, through an indictment. The other one takes 90 days through a process of recall. But in either case, you have the power to take those people out, get rid of them, and put good people in. And then, of course, not support. The key thing is to educate people. Support no one for office who hasn't taken a constitutional course, who doesn't know the Constitution and can't answer certain questions, that whatever you might dream up when you interview these people, because all those people get interviewed. But anyway, I'm going too far away from the subject here. But let me it should be an easy case.
Yeah, let me stop you right there and just, for the benefit of the group, ask, is it in your estimation that our use of the reciprocity clause is airtight for what we're doing?
No doubt in my mind.
That's where you want to be. You don't want to be in the statutory. And, from what I heard of this case, number one, the reason that you're not getting a problem with your 501(c)(3) is because they don't feel comfortable going there because everything they're doing is in a corporation. They don't like attacking corporations. They want to be friendly. They're a corporation. So you're part of the club kind of when you're in a corporation. They feel very comfortable coming in and violating an individual's rights because they know that they got their lawyers, and he only has one of their lawyers who's an officer of the court. So they know that they can steamroll them. They're not used to seeing somebody stand on their rights and not use a lawyer. And that's where we throw them off kilter because we bring them back to those fundamental principles. And if they really knew what we were doing and they understood the law, how it really was, they would much rather fight the corporation than fight the principle. Right. Is where we're going to go, so, and they will not win.
You will lose the case if you fight on a state level. Anything from a state down, county, town, any of that stuff. You're going to lose it. You can't win it because their local desire is going to win over anybody in that courtroom, and that judge is going to find that person guilty, and there's no getting away from that. It's only going to take a miracle, or if they have a runaway jury. If it's a jury trial and a jury runs away because they realize something that what they're being told by the prosecutor is not true and by the judge is not true. So now they're going to use their nullification abilities. But if Jersey has statutes saying certain things and they apply those statutes, that's what these people are going to convict on unless they nullify the law. And most juries have a problem because they don't know that they can nullify the law. And that's a major problem. That's an education requirement in order to fix this problem. Mm-hmm. But, you see, once you move it into a federal court, well, it's all over. That's a whole different story. And you're not even arguing the statutes no more. You're arguing constitutional, your unalienable rights protected by the Constitution. That's your argument. You're not going to argue the point that you're talking about hemp being sold and local statutes. All of that is irrelevant.
All right. And that's the thing. This court doesn't have any jurisdiction. It can't really grant remedy in this. It's in the wrong court because it is a fundamental issue with this fellow's rights. The only reason he's in there is because by his acquiescence, he's giving them jurisdiction over it. See, the minute he takes it to the federal court, he establishes that court is for these type of fights, not the state court. Because this is the state coming against the people. How can they rule on their own case? It has to go to a federal court, fundamentally speaking, and jurisdictionally speaking. So he's in the wrong jurisdiction, and they really don't have the authority or the jurisdiction and the power to give him relief. Now they could say, "No, we're going to drop the charges," and if they do that, of course, you take it because you want to get out of that door. But ultimately, you shouldn't be asking them for anything. You should be doing like John says. You should be applying this in the federal court and to your fundamental rights, your due process, and all these things that we talk about every day. And that's where you want to keep it. You don't want to discuss all this other minutia. Okay?
Right. And let me stop you guys right there before I move on to the next topic. I want to ask my people, starting with Our Lady, if they have any questions from at this point before we move on to the next thing I'd like to discuss. Are there any questions from the CannaSense people, starting with Stephanie?
Not yet.
All right.
Just to strengthen up from a statutory process, 18 U.S. 242. Okay, I just quickly looked this one up, which is deprivation of rights under color of law, and it goes on: whoever under color of any law, statute, ordinance, or regulation or custom, okay, willfully subjects any person in the state to deprivation of any rights shall be fined at this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. So anybody coming out using a ordinance or a regulation and in that process of exercising or executing that ordinance or regulation, which is the law in the state laws, and exercise that against you, and it violates one of your rights, your liberty, which is, of course, your liberty to choose, and medical, it gets into a lot of issues here. But then there's your statute against it right there.
All right.
And the federal court likes us to use
That's a
them.
federal statute. We'll use
Right.
them, but we're going to portray the Constitution and support that Constitution by the legislative support by using their statute and the judicial support by using Supreme Court rulings. So we're going to use the Constitution as the principle, and then the state and the judicial processes as supporting that.
Right.
Subordinate role.
So let me go through my roster here and see if there's anybody else who has any questions so far. Dave, do you have any questions so far?
No, I'm just listening.
All right, Ron? Is Ron still with us, or did he bail? All right, we'll assume he bailed. Greg?
Yes, that was really refreshing. Let me see. Is this Liberty Hall? And was I listening to Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin debate individual rights here? That's what it sounded like. Thank you. I mean, that was really informative. You know, I think that I pay my own lawyer $500 an hour, and he didn't sound anywhere near as informed as the both of you. All right. Thank you. Now, what I gather from all of this, hey, you know, well, I don't know if you know my case or not. Case was it 14-15050 up before the Supreme Court for being kidnapped and tortured, trying to stop war crimes. All right, that's me. All right, that's my case, and basically what I've heard from what you're saying is that my lawyer didn't have the faintest idea what he was doing at the time, and I was paying him $500 an hour. And secondly, the courts clearly didn't know what they were doing with my case. By the way, this is the Abu Ghraib prison torture issue in Iraq. All right. So what I gathered from what you're saying is, first of all, it was I'm extremely well informed because of you now. And secondly, I can see where we have to get the information of all of this out. That seems to be the bottleneck in what is going on.
We have a case we're filing in the next couple of weeks on the gun issue here in New York, and really this was a very easy case for me to put together. I put this case together literally in 8 hours or so, 10 hours. And it's a huge, huge case. And the reason why I was able to put it together so quickly ultimately is because it's the same argument every time. It's the same positions. Of course, we're fighting the Second Amendment, so we're going to deal with situations concerning weapons. A fight concerning, for instance, something with, medical use or even just for recreational use, a drug for that purpose. If we're going to fight that, we're going to fight that from the same position, and we're going to bring that into the issue. But it's always the same argument. It's always about what jurisdiction they have, what authority they have, and as long as due process is being applied. And if those things are happening, you're going to win that case. Now, lawyers, they fight. Look at lawyers. Generally, we were told by a lawyer who taught us how the things work in the courts, okay, that most cases, everybody knows who's going to win the case almost immediately. As soon as the case, all the paperwork is in and moving around, and the witnesses are all, prepared, and you ask your questions, and you go through that whole process before you go to fight the battle. Everybody knows who's going to win the case. It's already, but the other side, the lawyer on the other side, will continue to fight the battle, even though he knows he's going to lose. And so this is a major problem. The other thing is lawyers really don't know sometimes whether they're going to win or lose because the rules are in the back room by the judge before they even get started. And in a case like this, there's going to be a lot of backroom stuff. With us, they'll have empty back rooms because they can only talk to themselves because they'll never be able to approach us, nor will they be able to, okay? You see, the other lawyers, if they don't go into the back room and work out the details that the judge wants things to happen in what he calls his court, and it's not his court, it's our court, but he says it's his court, then they're going to obey that rule and those laws. They're not going to bring certain issues up that they're told not to bring up, okay? And they're going to say, don't bring the Constitution in my court. You go find your statutes, because this is going to be a statutory battle. That's what this is going to be. And that's where they'll win this thing, on a statutory battle. And where if he tries to argue against that to bring it into a constitutional issue, he could end himself like that guy out in Oregon, tased or go to jail, contempt of court. At some point, the judge is not going to tolerate the lawyer. At some point, he's going to let him, I want to find you in contempt of court. And he will do it. And so the judge controls the courtroom. If this is a situation that they want to remain with the status quo, the powers are telling them this case needs to be, won by us, not by them, then you're not going to win it. Now, when you come a person that is not a bar attorney, it's a whole different story. The battle is they're trying to say you can't come into this court, you can't represent anyone, or you can't do this and you can't do that. So you have all those battles and you could defeat them in a federal court. But the bottom line is once you bring the constitutional issue, they have nothing to come back. They can't win. And again, there's no backroom deals. They can't hold us under contempt. They can't make us obey their rules, their backroom rules, backroom law rules. And so it's a whole different thing. And this is the problem with our criminal justice, because the people aren't having courts under their consent. This is why we have these problems. And as long as we remain ignorant to this and we don't step up and take control of this, we're going to lose it, so we have to take control of it.
All right. John, there's another big topic that I really want you guys to cover, and I'll tell you that...
I don't get to ask any questions?
Oh, that's right. Roger, sorry, go ahead. Do you have any questions? Regarding
I don't have any
reciprocity?
questions, but I have a very short, especially for me, comment to make, okay? I have spent 3 years talking to these two fine gentlemen from National Liberty Alliance. Nothing they have said surprises me. Nothing they have said opens up new territory in my belief on how they think or my respect for them. The reason, and I will always do you guys proud, that I recommended they come here in the first place was because I knew what they could do for us. And if anybody listening to this call tonight is not as impressed as I am, I would be shocked.
I am. I'll tell you that right now.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it, but don't get our heads too big.
All right. Now,
you're New York boys. We know.
Now the next.
This is all really about knowledge and vigilance, because as Thomas Jefferson said, the price of liberty or the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. It doesn't end. It's a constant, eternal vigilance on this subject matter, which is liberty. It must be guarded. We must, post our soldiers wherever we can, who are going to watch for the breach of liberty in our courts and in our political realms. And as long as we do that, we can have a very strong, a God-blessed nation again. Because look at one of the things that government is to secure the blessings of liberty. That's one of the 6 criteria of the Constitution that must be fulfilled. There are 6 criteria that must be filled, at least one of them by any law that they write, and it's found in the first words of the Constitution, the preamble. And so it's we the people who ordained and established, and we ordained and established that it is a job of all government is to protect the blessings of liberty. And the blessings of liberty comes only when you understand and exercise true liberty, because that requires a maturity and a morality, because you can't have it without those 2 things. A maturity to allow the next guy to do what he wants as long as he doesn't injure anybody, maybe himself, but no one else. And the morality to do the right thing and uphold your part in society. And this we have to have eternal vigilance on. Without it, we will lose it. And that's why we've lost it, because we don't have the gods of liberty there, the true gods of liberty. And that's what National Liberty is really trying to create, is the true gods of liberty, which is the people on the grassroots level, an educated people. We don't need any kind of a formal education. We need the education of life, law, and morality.
Okay.
All right. So
my battery's going to run out soon.
The next
why do
topic.
I think I just had a shot of B12? I had a shot of B12, Roger. Okay.
Oh. And you're hacking your brains out. I can hear it.
Well, hey, that, I told you I was tortured by our own government.
Yeah,
and that's part of the damage that I received was burned lungs as a result. So, but anyway, my goodness, I'm inspired. I'm ready to go tomorrow, ready to go, first thing.
All right, guys.
Okay, with you guys backing us up, hey, we can't lose, all right? So
there's another huge topic that I want these guys, because time is limited here, I want these guys to be able to cover, and I'll let me expound on it a little bit, is whenever presenting what CannaSense is doing, the biggest area that we get opposition to is the fact that we do ship across state lines via the United States Postal Service. And so this brings up a lot of concerns from people who haven't joined. It makes them nervous because cannabis is, as far as the government is concerned, is still a Schedule 1. Now, the way that we sort of approach this is through the Commerce Clause. Since we are a 501c3 nonprofit, we're not conducting commerce, therefore there is no jurisdiction. Also, we all here know that the jurisdiction of the federal government is the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C., and the state line is not federal territory. The only thing that constitutes federal territory is Fort Sports and magazines. So, that being said, I want you to, in just a moment, to really look at the Commerce Clause, explain to us if it does apply to what we're doing, if the Commerce Clause applies to the people, because when I read the Constitution, it's to foreign nations and the Native American tribes. But I will tell you a situation that we have faced, which is currently our fulfillment center in California has to go through all of the hoops of, making sure the medicine is sealed and secured, and it doesn't, it's not anything obvious to get pegged or flagged at the post office. However, we have in the past, and as of this week, had 7 packages that were coming from California that were seized by law enforcement in Santa Barbara, California. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Of course, whenever we have patients that have had medicine seized for whatever reason, a dog hits on it or whatever, typically they'll get a letter from the postmaster asking them to contact them, and if they don't within 30 or 60 or 90 days, they will destroy the package. Of course, we're trying to educate our patients to Fifth Amendment it up and basically don't get entrenched in it. We're not giving legal advice, but we're just telling them what we would do, which is don't call, don't respond, let them destroy the evidence or the package, as it were. However, this week, 7 packages that were sent from our fulfillment center out of California were seized in Santa Barbara, and then they were allowed to continue to their states of destination, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and some other states. When the patients received their package, there were holes poked in them to open the package, and they were resealed, and all of the boxes were empty. So they were seized by law enforcement, emptied, and then allowed to continue on their way to their destination. And so this is a curious situation that we're not quite sure what to make of it, but we do know, we're smart enough to know that this is illegal, what the federal employees are doing at these post offices. So if you could, what I'd like you guys to do is really explain the Commerce Clause. Does it apply to what we're doing as a nonprofit? How would you guys approach the issue of us using the United States Postal Service across state lines to deliver medicine to qualified patients? So I'll give you the floor for that.
I had to unmute my mic here. Yeah, first of all, look, when it comes to these packages, let's look at that first. The fact that they opened those packages up and then especially putting them back onto the process to be delivered, and then you're saying they opened it up and the product was not there?
That's correct.
Right.
We can send you
okay,
the pictures.
and then you got enough different packages where holes were made in it to see what's in it. Did those products arrive also, or did some of those products get through?
From my understanding so far, all the packages that were seized in Santa Barbara were sent through, but when they got to their destination, they were completely empty. It was just the box.
Okay, so what you need to do, look at, there is a tracking number on that, and you could track that by signature and handler. And that's what you need to do, is track that all the way through. And every person that handled it from the point of where the break-in took place, because ultimately it's a Fifth Amendment violation here, because it is private property that's inside that package being entrusted in the hands of the government, who has and it's not the government anymore either. That's another problem with them. So it's not even people that are in our government. So we have two. They keep telling us it's a government, so we'll deal with them as a government agency when they're not anymore. But everybody believes it is, so we'll play with the false reality. I think it's easier to beat them up that way than to go the other route. But once you get to the point, you see the Postal Service is honored by the government and the judicial process, because we use the Postal Service to serve people. You know, we do an affidavit of service from this side, which places it into the mail, and then we have that tracked with a signature, and that signature is as valid as the sheriff coming and serving a paper on you. Okay, it's as valid as that. Now, with that in mind, it shows the seriousness of what the mail is all about, and that's all about your personal effects, and that's protected under the Fifth Amendment just to begin with. Okay, so that's where the battle would start, and then you can go and find out who these individuals are, and you can apply upon them these codes that we were talking about. The one we just brought up, what was it, USC 18243, I think, or it was 41 or 42. Well, all of those codes in there. There's about 4 or 5 of them there, and there's some on that's 40 US 42 and US 18. But anyway, you can use those codes where they came in under the color of law, and they broke in. They violated your what do you call it? Privacy, your belongings, your personal belongings. Okay, so that's one thing. Yeah,
they're never going to admit to taking the stuff out, because it could actually be theft. Once they make their little marks on it, and then it goes down into the post office, other people know that maybe that's cannabis, and they break in and they take it.
Yeah, but they can't lose. They can't get away with that argument if you have enough of those kind of things happening.
Well, yes, you're going to have to. It's like a sting operation. But look, that's where we would start the argument from. Okay.
The other thing is
I just want to get this out before I forget. You know, he said they get a letter from the postmaster come in, and he told them to ignore it, which is good advice, by the way. I think that's great advice, except for if they're going to start getting more over the top and you're not going to be able to ship anything. However, if they take a package and they know that there's cannabis in it, and then they let it ship to the state, they may have a sting going on the other end. So they may feel that they can't exercise the federal statutes as well, and maybe they want the state to come in on the other end and alert the state, hey, you got a shipment of cannabis coming in, and we know that you got the statute, go after this person. So that's the other thing you got to watch, that they're not playing a game with the local officials to alert them when this stuff is coming in to go over there and intercept it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the only way you're going to stop this is by going after the individuals that breaking in, and maybe 1, 2, 3, 5, I don't know. But if you've got these cases, so many cases, you can trace every single case, and you can find out if it's the same handler, a person who touches that, and every time that person touches it, it ends up under that kind of a situation where the product is taken out. Well, now you can prove they're all connected. You can prove this isn't a coincidence, and that right now you're making a criminal thing out of this. And if you do one, it'll shake the foundation of the Postal Service, and they will not do it again anywhere, because it'll funnel through the whole process if you can get these people convicted. But that's where I would start pushing this case. The other thing for your protection is in Article 4, as we spoke about the Full Faith and Credit Act, and or Full Faith and Credit statement here. It's Article 4, Section 1, and it says here concerning judicial proceedings of every other state. Okay, let me read the whole thing. Full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public acts, record, and judicial proceedings. That's the key for us. Judicial proceedings of every other state. So that brings us to the court of record, the court of law, which brings us to liberty, the Constitution, and as Marbury versus Madison ultimately said, anything that is vile or repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. And what they're really talking about ultimately, although they're talking about the whole Constitution, but they're talking about the last part of the Constitution, which was the Bill of Rights. That's what they're talking about, because that is the ruler of liberty. That is the ruler of what true law is. Anything that violates that cannot be law. Anything that doesn't injure those things can be the law, okay? And that's how you put a rule on every law. Does it injure the people in any way? Does it violate their rights? Mm-hmm. Now, the Section 2 of the same Article 4, which is the second part of this, is the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all the privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. So the point is, ultimately I can make an argument here in New York or any other state, but it's going to be an uphill argument. No one has made it yet. I'd like to make these arguments. I don't have the money to make these arguments, but I'd love to make all of them. When you go into some place like, I think it's Vermont, that you don't even need a permit or a license. Is that true, Gerard? Is that Vermont? Or?
Yeah, Vermont. Vermont. Yep.
Okay, so let's say I'm in Vermont, and now, I can make an argument in New York, I can make an argument in Jersey or California, the fact that I can carry a weapon in this state, and you can't touch me because, first of all, it's recognized here in Vermont. And if we want to fight that battle, it's a constitutional battle, well, let's go. We'll win it anyway. But the bottom line is because that has been acknowledged in one state, and that's not the only state. There are many states you don't need permits and licenses. And you can apply that. Now, again, in New York, they're still going to arrest you, because, there's anything more dangerous than ignorance and power, whether it be a police officer on the road or a judge being, in a courtroom. There's nothing more dangerous because you have no idea what they're going to do. They have no knowledge and understanding of what they're truly doing. They're bar controlled. They're statutory beings. They work off statutory processes. They violate your rights day in and day out. Their jobs have become violators of the rights of the people ultimately, because that's what codes do. Anytime a political officer, anybody who works for a politician, and that's whether it's you're working for the mayor or the governor, I don't know, or the county supervisors, if there's a county police force, I don't know. The only free one, of course, is the sheriff who's elected. But if it's a political animal, he's going to apply codes on you. Mm-hmm. When he's got his uniform on and he pulls you over on the side of the road or stops you in the street, he's examining you for code violations, and he's looking for this one, that one. Same thing when the FBI comes to your door to some degree. They're examining you for violations or code violations on their level. And but the bottom line is that's the problem, and that's what we have to deal with right here, the immunities, privileges and immunities of citizens in every state from any other state. That's the key. So these are the three parts that I would use to make the argument.
So and the Commerce Clause mm-hmm. has been twisted or bastardized to a certain extent, because it's that Congress should make things regular, not regulate, make it regular, which means that you're protecting the rights from one state across state lines. Mm-hmm. They were never meant to regulate; they were to make regular. That's the
market
language.
Flow. Once they restrict the market flow of any item, they start controlling and cornering that market and working with a particular group of people who are going to make money off that on the free market. And that's not free market. Yeah, whether it's a heavy flow or a light flow, they're there not to regulate the flow, but to make regular that flow, to allow it to happen, however it may happen. Okay. And that's a free market.
And the Jersey thing, I think, was the moving factor was the local sheriff with money. Mm-hmm. And so that's another story. Now, have you thought about using a different carrier like UPS? Would that offer you any different set of, situations as far as shipping stuff? I mean, why do you got to send it through the mail?
We have been in discussion about that. That's something that's still in the process. But I think one of the concerns is because those are privately owned corporations, and yes, I know that so is the United States Postal Service, that there's less red tape for them to be able to open those packages. So that's something that we're looking at. But what I would ask you to do is, what would you say to the distribution center out in California that is shipping this? What would you say to them to be able to safeguard themselves with the shipping of medicine across state lines?
Well, look, I believe we know you're going to have problems, and you how long have you been doing this, and how many problems have you had? I mean, I don't know if that's something you can answer, but I mean, how long have you been shipping, and can you give me an idea of what kind of resistance you're getting?
3 years, CannaSense has been in operation, and 7 packages thus far of our collective, but not specifically stopped by CannaSense's distribution center. So.
And only one criminal case has arisen, and that's in Jersey.
That's correct.
And there was
Okay.
40
So-
from CannaMed Angels also, which was another collective we were involved in a little bit.
Right. That was a.
Okay. Well, this is the position I would take. I would go out. I wouldn't wait for this to come at you and then have to defend it. I would go out after these people, and because you can use these cases as leverage to go out after the government, and you can find your targets. They should be pretty easy to find, and go out after them and make a big enough thing about this and a requirement of the enforcement of law, which means jail time. Not that you'll get it, but to push it hard enough that it'll shake the foundation and cause that whole system to become conscious of this kind of mail moving through their system, and they're going to leave it alone. Why? Because you went to put a guy in jail that touched it, and you shouldn't have touched it. Okay? That's where I would be chasing this. I wouldn't wait for them to come for you. You be the plaintiff, get in first. And if you are the defendant, you have to become the plaintiff. Look, if they put criminal charges against me, I'm still going to become the plaintiff in that case because I'm going to put criminal charges against them. So they're going to have there's going to be two court hearings going on. And they're going to hear my side. They may try to restrain me on my defense, but they definitely won't be able to restrain me on my assault, and that's why I would become the defendant. Become the plaintiff, even in a criminal case. And let's say I was assaulted, and my criminal case was in there, and I was the guy that was beat up and deserved restitution. I'm going to be involved in that case also and file my claims and make my argument in the same court before the same jury on the same case, even though it's a criminal case, because they never restore the injured party. They'll find them, they'll put them in jail, and it goes into the politicians' pockets. It goes into all the people running the judicial system. They get all this money, and there's different ways that they work this out. But the bottom line is the injured party gets nothing. So you have to be proactive here. You got to move in ahead of them. Again, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Mm-hmm. Don't wait for the problem to come to you. Let's go and make them have the problem and win the battle, shake their foundation, and scare them. It gets back to the principle that was set up. I think it was Jefferson or Franklin that say, when the people fear the government, you have tyranny. When the government fears the people, you have liberty, and that's where we got to get to, and that's what freedom is all about. That's what eternal vigilance is: the continual reminding, on the littlest level, as soon as we perceive an assault is going to come upon us, that we stop it before it happens, right. And that's where I think you guys really need to go.
Okay, and
all right,
go after them.
Hey, on the note about how you could track down a person's signature, all the tracking information that we have is very vague. Basically, it says reach this destination and blah blah blah. And since they're like
you can go down. You go down. Yes, you go down to the original post office where that went out of, and I've already done this. Okay, you have that number. Make sure you apply the date to it. I went down with an older one, and the guy was looking and couldn't find it, and he says, "I just don't understand this." And then I mentioned something about dates. Oh, I didn't go back for it. Then he went back. Okay, they have on record the whole trail. And remember, here's the other side of this thing. Government is required to keep all their paperwork forever. Okay, so if that post office was owned by the government, it would be forever. Being that it's privately owned, a lot of people don't know that, owned by foreign people, as a matter of fact, and not even, it's a corporation out of America. Well, but that's a big, well, they're all crimes, yeah. But not really. We need to take that back, as a matter of fact. But the bottom line is
it was Jefferson. It was Jefferson.
Was it?
It wasn't Franklin. It was Jefferson.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, the key thing here is that even though they oh goodness, I lost my frame of thought here. Where was I? What were we talking about? I lost my train.
Going to the post offices, tracking.
Oh, okay. The post offices, yes. Okay. Yeah, look, once you go down there to the post office, they got at least, even if it's on the other side of things, I think it's 7 years they require you to keep records. Okay, remember, that's somewhat government control still anyway. The thing's lost. But in any event, go down to the post office, bring the date and the number, and ask for the complete trail and all signatures connected to it. And you will have the carriers and everything.
It would have to be the distributor or the person receiving the mail, correct?
It would be the person that sent it.
That sent it. Okay,
the
so
distributor. You go down there and you trace. You want the signatures, the trail of every person that touched that package, and went from this person to that person. Now, let's say it went to a place.
Can't the recipient make the same claim though? The recipient?
Probably. I don't see why not.
Yeah, but you're paying for that service when you put it in there. It's you that paid for that particular.
Yeah, the sender paid, but the other one is receiving it, so both can probably do it. But
yeah,
anyway,
I guess
the bottom line, though, that comes down to it, let's say, okay, you trace it to the problematic area, and the problematic area is maybe involves 50 people or 20 people in that area where the package got violated, okay? Well, then there is someone in charge of that area. There's whoever the supervisor of that area is, that's your target, you see? And that's the person you sue. And if it's the wrong person, he should be able to tell you who did violate it. Because nothing should be going on into this thing without their knowledge anyway. They're in control of this. But the bottom line is I always go for the person who's in charge.
What is that crime? Is that mail fraud? I mean, tampering with the mail, the U.S. mail? That's a federal offense, right?
Well, I think it's robbery. I think it's a violation.
It is a federal offense. It is a federal offense.
It's a federal offense. So,
yes. Fifth Amendment right.
Look, I would go in there with a suit and tie on. I would scare the local people there. I would get dressed up so you look like an attorney and brush up on the law so you can quote a little bit of it and say, look, this package was tampered with. We want to get to the bottom of this,
And now that you're dealing with controlled substances, which are medicines, it even escalates it more.
Right, because they're tampering with a controlled substance.
Well, if you're going to go do that, you talk to the postmaster. The postmaster, you let him know that he's the guy that's going to be held liable if he doesn't cooperate. Now, first of all, you don't do that. You let him cooperate, because usually they do. I find them very friendly.
Well,
so they'll
what
cooperate.
I was going to say.
And you don't even need to explain to them what you're looking for. You don't need to say anything. You just need the tracing, and you want to know every hand that touched it. And they'll give you that information. But if they did give you a hard time, then you let them know a little more what's going on. And if you want to be the doorkeeper of this crime, that's fine. You're the guy you're our target.
I would go in with somebody else and say, I represent Mr. So-and-so who mailed this package, and we want to get to the bottom. Don't even tell them what's in the package. Just say, look, you have a problem here. And like John says, you could back away from it after that and then try a new shipment and see if all of a sudden it gets better. Because, look, you don't want to go to court and file charges if you don't have to.
Well, no, they do want to do that once now because they want to make an example. Even if the person doesn't go to jail, it should rock their boat. Yes. It'll go through the
If I might interject something here.
Out into the public eye.
Okay. If I might say something here that might help is I come from a winemaking family, and we used to ship wine, by the case, through first of all, the U.S. Post Office, but then we went to UPS. Now, in all the years we did this, something like 30 years, I would say we had only one situation that I remember where a case of wine arrived and there was a bottle missing, okay? And so don't ask me the vintage and all that, what side of the vineyard it was made from. But the thing is we took that complaint in and everything stopped. This was to UPS, okay? Everything stopped. They ran down where that bottle disappeared, okay? Somebody probably saw that.
It's very serious. Yes, it's very serious.
Everything stopped, and we never had another problem for, probably 15, 20 more years till we finally sold the winery. But the thing is...
And that's an affidavit to be made, by the way, because, if you were to fight this battle on 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 packages in 3-year period versus one package in 30-year period, that's an affidavit to be made.
No, it will happen again. If the complaint is made, they will follow through with it, especially in Santa Barbara. And it won't happen again.
Yeah, but no, what I'm trying to say, though, is that's a position to be brought into a court of law, an affidavit making the point that a company that is shipping something, okay, to some degree, it's wine, so it's alcohol,
medicine.
Yeah, exactly. So that's controlled. Okay, now you've only seen one bottle removed from one package in 30 years. Okay, that in an affidavit from someone and who knows both sides and what's happened on the other side, where you got a company that's 3 years old and has had many violations of packages. That in itself makes the point. That's what I'm talking about when I say that's an affidavit. That should be brought into an affidavit. Look, you need to mount a battle whether you like it or not. Don't wait for the battle to come to you. You go to it and chop it off under the legs. When they're not battling to defend themselves, it's easier to win this battle when there's really all you're looking for is for them to do the right thing. You're willing to give them the olive branch. Just do the right thing. You're willing to ignore the criminal charges, but you need to do the right thing because we're going to not ignore it next time. That's what you need. And let me tell you, that will move through the Postal Service like a wildfire for anyone because that's also a deterrent for other things because they got a liability there. And it's a deterrent.
The issue of integrity and compliance are absolutely paramount to their operations.
Exactly.
So everything will stop, especially with.
But I would go to UPS too. That's what I would do.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right. So let me stop right there and do the same thing I did with the last topic. Go through the roster here, starting with Stephanie. If there's any questions, because this is the biggest issue that we get is the lack of understanding about shipping cannabis through the mail and that it's a Schedule I and all of that. So, Stephanie, do you have any questions regarding
Actually, that was my question got covered in this whole how do we move forward, because I am definitely on board with pushing back in the proper manner, and I agree with what John had just laid out, that this is the plan of action. So no questions. I'm totally on board. All
right. Dave, you got any questions thus far about the shipping concerns?
I pretty much said my piece already.
All right.
But now we're in the battlefront, and we can really turn some shit up.
Roger?
I not only agree with everything they've said, but you and I, Daniel, have kicked this word around over and over again, and we are, with what we need to do going forward, we in fact must start establishing precedents. And I think that's what's coming from John and Gerard. Don't sit back and wait for them to come to you, because if you do that, they're coming fully armed. Go on the surprise attack. Show up at the office and say, let's do this.
Right now they think we're cowering.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. And they know how to operate like that.
I think
it's always better to be the plaintiff than the defendant.
Well, let me wrap this up, because Daniel, you have mentioned over and over again, hey, look, we've got the team from Marvel Comics here, the whole 9 yards. We've got all this talent. We've got. If you stop and consider, we are all liberty-minded here, each and every one of us. Okay. We're not going to sit here and cower. I don't see anybody in this group cowering, okay? Which means we're the group that's going to step up and do something. If it doesn't happen with us, it ain't going to happen.
Let me give you a case in point, and this is a case in point that everyone, if you're serious about what you're doing and you really want to get on top of this and you really want to squash it and prevent this kind of assault upon your business and yourself and your person, then you need to get an education. And clearly, this case in point, by reading it, will give you an education, because it'll show you exactly how we would make this battle. The only difference is a Second Amendment issue in opposed to this issue here. And so if you go to our website, nationallibertyalliance.org, and you highlight the news, and underneath the news, you will see what's called the New York SAFE Act lawsuit. And you click on that, you come down a few lines. You can now, I just posted this today, you can read the action at law, the Second Amendment. This is the first draft. And this is the kind of a paper we would write. It would be this tone, and pretty much a lot of the positions, a lot of the law, case law, a lot of the memorandums, everything. You see, we've already done this ultimately, and each case has to be put together and framed around whatever the issue is, but it's always the same thing. It's always about liberty. It's always about the Constitution. It's always about the Bill of Rights. It's always about, we the people have the right and the authority. We're over you. We didn't give you permission. And that's the key of this whole thing. Where do you think you have the authority? Well, the judge will tell you, I have this statute. Well, where does he think he's got the authority? We need to trace this all the way back, and I just did that for you, and I showed you. He doesn't have that authority, so where do you get your authority? You see, that's the argument that needs to be made. You got to trace them back to the Constitution and show them you don't have the authority. You got to make this battle. in court. And you don't want to do it from the defensive side. You need to launch the assault now. Why? You've got a motivation because your packages are being opened. You've got a motivation to pursue this. You've got a reason to pursue it. You've got a stick in the door. Pry it open.
And we've got a stronger stance if we go to them than if we let them or wait till they come
Right.
to us.
We control the narrative. That's the key. Whoever controls the narrative has the upper hand. And we control the narrative so strongly, I guarantee you they will never answer our papers because they cannot answer their papers. They will blow all kinds of smoke and bullshit into the court, and we will bring the air purifiers and we'll blow out the smoke and we'll show the truth. They cannot defeat it in any kind of a logical course. But you got to ready to really fight this battle because if the judge turns around and with all logic and with all common sense and he tries to take control and do a summary judgment, you got to be ready to do a writ of error and apply that writ of error, remove that judge from that bench for fraud on the court and sue him for the same issues. And it gets back to the same codes, the same thing. It's just a different issue. In this case, it's due process. So you got to be ready for that. Once you make this battle, you make that splash big enough, okay?
I think we can.
Then the rest of that whole system's gonna back off.
All right. And when you read the cases that we write, don't skip over the footnotes because the footnotes are really back up everything.
Yeah, I would read. I tell people read through it without reading the footnotes first, then go back the second time and read it again, and now you use the footnotes because you'll get the full effect at that point.
Right.
Guys, and
I don't know if you guys saw that Chavez questioning the FBI guy, and he said, "Well, we only gave you half the information." Did you see that interview with Congressman or I think
yes.
it's Congressman? And the guy said,
he used to be. He's not anymore.
Who used to be? Oh, that guy.
Kevin.
That guy.
He's gone. He's now a Fox News contributor.
Oh,
he
well,
resigned his position.
Oh, no kidding. They must have threatened him.
Yes, they did. Major and his
goodness.
entire family.
Oh, he was so strong. I was jumping up and down when I heard that. That was so refreshing. What part of the Constitution that gives you the right? Where do you think you get that authority? He took it right to where we would take it. You know. No, anyway, I'm sorry. You were going to say something.
No worries. I guess another aspect of CannaSense that we wanted to relate to you guys is when CannaSense was founded, the aspect of a legal defense fund or a legal defense wing was something that we incorporated to our members to kind of give them some security and let them know that any push back from any state that they're in that stemmed from possession, that CannaSense would be able to help them out. And in the 3 years of operation, I was the only person that really qualified for the legal defense. But in a scenario,
right. Well, what you need to do though is give the people an education. Then on your website, you should give them a free education where they can go and take a free course. You also we wrote a book on empowering the sheriff. That same book can empower anyone. So we wrote a book on empowering the grand jury and the trial jury. We wrote a book on the sheriff. We're writing a book right now, ultimately for the administrators of the court system and process. Okay, and it's going to be a handbook, sort of, how things work. Just like the sheriff was written for a handbook. You put it in a shirt pocket, you'd have reference to it. It was written topically to go into the table of contents and find different issues and understand the law and their position. And what we need to do, and we started it with 2 free courses that we have, but you need to get a handbook for the people, and people need to be educated in the law, and they need to understand that they need to defend themselves. We shouldn't be going into court making an argument using our lawyers. We should be going into the court as people, making the position. I'm a businessman. This is what's going on, and this is what happened. And I want to be restored back. This is what happened. The government did this, or the people did that, or whatever the case may be. And you're looking for restitution. And look at courts is what the purpose of court is. And when you bring it down to that level, you're going to get rid of a lot of court cases. You're going to get rid of a lot of problems. 90% of what goes on in the court will no longer go on in the court when you get onto that level.
Well,
because
his problem is he has people that want that legal protection because they're not educated.
Right.
So what he's done is he's promised them that they would help them. And yes, you can. I understand.
But you need to give them information before anything even happens. Look,
Right,
when someone becomes a client or whatever you call these people, what are you calling them? A patient, a client, a patient. When someone becomes a patient, you want to give them understanding of all their rights, don't you? Look, don't they make you sign these stupid papers that take away all your rights and people think it's helping your rights when you go see a doctor?
We're already working on that, John. We're already working on putting out a weekly educational video and articles, and yes, putting everything together in one place.
But it has to be done very unconventional. Forget about the coming in with suit jacket and tie. This has got to be kind of relaxed to liberty, and it's got to go to places where people never thought it would go.
You ever see me wear a tie? Come on. Ever? Come on.
But the thing is it's got to go where people never thought it would go. And so you have to get to the core of what we're talking about, which gets back to liberty over and over and over again. And education is the key, and a support system is the key also, you know?
Well, the word I was looking for before was collective that you guys were using that I was impressed with. Because when you start a collective, like you said, if you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. What your customers and your clients and your patients have to understand is that they are part of a collective, and they need to rest in that. And even if it's us coming in and writing a paper for them or whatever, or you could if you have lawyers that can learn the common law, they're in trouble though, because if they're in the bar, the judge will control them. I would never let a lawyer go into court. They need to go in, themselves, sui juris or whatever, as their own person, because otherwise, if they're really pushing back hard, they'll do what they always do, and they'll use their statutes against you, and they'll suck you down. So it's important, that they're educated, and it's a better person to go into court with that understands some of the law. You know what I mean? So that when you're telling them things, they'll understand how you're defending them and why you're doing it. It just makes it much easier than somebody sitting there completely oblivious to the process. Very hard to help somebody that can't help themselves. You know what I mean?
I agree with you 100%, and that we're in the process of doing that, or furthering that. That was something that was done, not to the degree that all of us would like, but it will be moving forward. But just for the sake of where we're at, let's say I actually do have a patient in my care that got in. They have their medical recommendation. They received their medicine, and they were arrested for possession about a month ago. But now it's rush time for this individual. This individual doesn't have the time to learn the Constitution like we do, but they are a part of our collective. What would you guys do if we were to partner up? What would you do for an individual member that's in his position, which is he's facing, charges for possession? Is there anything that you could do?
Well, habeas corpus is the first thing, but it's a little difficult to get a habeas corpus, unfortunately, because, the way the court system is up, it has to be authorized by someone in the court. And the authority of the court, they believe which is the magistrate, which is also a judge. All judges are magistrates. So a magistrate or a judge in the court system has to sign the paper for a habeas corpus to go forward. We found a thing around that because look at the very first grand jury that was called and required habeas corpus due process took place back with the Magna Carta, 1215, and it was the people who rose up. We didn't have to go to the judge, so the people can be that signator. So that's what we have done. We've done quite a few of them. We've only had 2 of them successful. We've done maybe about 30 of them or so. But that doesn't mean that they're completely lost because we're going to the next process right now. As a matter of fact, we're going to bring indictments against these judges that ignored this person's right of due process. So maybe we'll get some leverage there, too, to get this person out of jail. We kind of hope so, these people. But the point is a habeas corpus would be the first place to go, and clearly the grand jury can authorize that. The second thing that really would do is get it out of that court. It's not they have violated this person's unalienable right, and we could build a case because it's medical. The whole thing is built around a medical so we could make that case clearly. And because local laws and the ignorance of local laws, that's their problem. You need to take them into a federal court and go after them for violating your unalienable right, your right of due process, and all acting under the color of law. Whether they understand it or not, they should have understood it, because when they raised their hand, they took that oath. And if they didn't understand that oath, then they shouldn't have taken that oath. That's their problem. And that's a fraud there. The fact that you took the oath and you didn't say, wait a second, I don't understand what that means. Can you explain that to me? And now you're talking about an education. You can't support the Constitution if you haven't read it and studied it. How can you support it if you haven't studied it? What are you supporting? What are you doing? How can you recognize a violation? How can you recognize the difference between true law and a statute? You can't, okay? So, and all of them are guilty of that, and that's because we don't have an educated people. Jefferson spoke about this, and we have to educate the people. And again, that's what National Liberty Alliance is all about, the educational process, and get the grassroots moving, doing their job. But that's where you got to go with this. You got to bring the education.
Also, I think what he's asking you, what would you do for this guy? I think what he's
asking
you.
Well, I take it to federal court.
Yeah, but are you willing to write the paper for him? I mean, he's got to go right away.
Write the papers.
That's what he's asking, because, look, these guys are not ready to write that paper.
What state are we talking about?
Georgia.
What? Georgia.
Okay,
yeah, we'd write the papers. There is another problem, and that is someone being in Georgia making a representation, and you could take it into the federal court and make the argument, but you'd have to have someone go in there that has some knowledge of the court system with that person that's not a bar attorney, because if you got a bar attorney in there, they're going to stop them. Mm-hmm. If you're not a bar attorney, they can't control you.
Yeah, I mean, if you had somebody that, I mean, we had some attorneys that have given up their bar license so that they can come in and operate and help people like this.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I mean, if you can find somebody like that knows how, because you got to know how to navigate the court too. You know what I mean? That's the problem.
So you can look to someone that's in the system, that's come out of it and realizes it's a problem. You know, we do have one person who is a paralegal. Okay, a paralegal would be good at this, and that paralegal has understands how things work. Look at here's the key thing: someone who understands the point. This is your argument. You don't move from it. People have a problem and they get snared, and the other side will taser you and prod you to get you off your point and to move in a direction that you don't want to move and make an argument that you don't want to make. Look at, there's only one argument here. It's called due process and jurisdiction, and that's the fight. And if you can get someone who understands that can stand up and articulate the position is really very easy to understand. Someone with just a little bit of knowledge, like a paralegal, could handle this. Okay. How often do you get a case like this?
It's never happened before.
Yeah.
Well, even if you got one person who's willing to travel when it's necessary to go stand up on a case, we can educate that person. Mm-hmm. But they have to have knowledge of the process. As long as they have knowledge of the process, like the paralegal, then we can give them the knowledge of the Constitution.
And
it should be easy for them.
You have to educate this defendant himself. He should have somewhat of a knowledge of what's going on. And what they do is, like, if they can get you in court and anything you say on the record, you can hang yourself. So the best thing to do is teach him to say, I object because it's not my wish, and don't say anything. And then you put the paperwork in later. Mm-hmm. The less he says in court, the better off you are. We can fill paperwork out, but if he goes in there and opens his mouth too much or says the wrong thing, then you're constantly doing damage control over the things that he said, where he's moved himself into an area where you don't want him to be. Right. So the best thing to do is let him put the paperwork in. Most of it should be fought on paper. It shouldn't be an appearance. You should try not to have any appearances as much as you can help it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you're going to have to. It's a criminal case, so he's going to have to appear somewhat. But at that point, he could just say, I object. Why do you object? Because it's not my wish. And then when court's over, you put your paperwork in. And it's not that hard once you learn how to write papers to do it.
Maybe you need a plan A and a plan B. A plan A is, I don't know if you ever heard of prepaid legal, okay? But anybody that is in the need of hemp and wants to purchase this through this process, and it should be strongly suggested to them that they join prepaid legal. Now, prepaid legal could be your plan A. because they can make the basic case of statute and lay it out. Okay, we just have to put all the information together. So when the case comes up, we hand off a brief to the whatever lawyer in prepaid legal is going to take it up, and they would then take the case, use that brief to make their support. We give them all the statutes they want, because that's how they're going to operate. So if Plan A fails on the first time into the court, we're moving the court to throw this out because of this, and you lay out the statutes, and you move for a summary judgment, which is lawful. Now they refuse to do that. Then Plan B. Plan B is filing the papers, bringing them into federal court, going after the judge, going after the prosecutor, and going after any individual along the line that has their fingers into this case towards pushing towards prosecution. You go after the whole string. You go after the arresting officer, like I said, the judge, and the prosecutor. Those three definitely. Maybe there's other people involved, but those three definitely. And you bring them into federal court, and you go after them for violating people's unalienable right under the color of law, number one, and not giving due process. We could prove that any of these court places are not giving anybody due process. They're all administrative, every single one of them. Unless you force a constitutional court or a court of record, you're not going to get it.
Okay. And when you bring it into a federal court and you get summonses on the arresting officer or maybe the judge or whatever, they get upset right away. And a lot of times at that point they fold because they don't want it to go.
That's where the deal will take place.
They'll say, let's make a deal. And you don't have to go through that whole baloney trial because, first of all, the federal judge is going to know that he can't rule against it. They're going to lose. So he pulls them in and he says, listen, I don't want this case in my court. Get rid of it. So now they're forced to make a deal with you. And you don't settle for anything except for complete exoneration and maybe some damages too. You know what I'm saying? You don't plea bargain to a lesser thing. No, you want the whole enchilada because they're wrong.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for this education tonight. All right. Now, I'm going to be directing, starting tomorrow, directing different articles and enhancing the education process for the group. And all our customers, too, of course. Excuse me, patients. So, and I should know the difference since I used to be a doctor at one time, and a pretty good one at that. But the issue is I think we need to be aware of the different lobbies that are going to be coming after us. It isn't just a law enforcement issue trying to get a little revenue on the side. There's going to be issues with the alcohol lobby. The alcohol lobby is taking it on the chin with this new legalization of medical cannabis, certainly. And then Big Pharma. Big Pharma's not going to sit still. I mean, they've got such an aggressive program right now. They're just begging for a little bit of competition. But I'm going to make sure that everybody starts getting educated on this, incrementally, pyramidally, and then I'm going to make sure we get information, education on what you folks just were gracious enough to give us, law enforcement. Okay, that's always a big one, and then the issue of medical, any of the medical issues that come up, as much as we can within reason. But the thing is, and then also educate everyone on the vagaries of shipment and transportation. That's what I'm getting from this conversation tonight. And I think we ought to start educating everyone. Okay, we've got a brand new super duper product that can revolutionize some of these areas. So I think we should get, an educated public, educated user is the best thing I think we can come up with for our own benefication and our own protection. So I'm taking your advice. You said get everybody educated. So that's what I'm going to start doing tomorrow.
That's the key. And, that is the key, education. Let me tell you, when you talk about the problems, it's Big Pharma, lobbying and alcohol and all those other institutions that ultimately, become, try to put pressure to prevent you doing your business and getting, hemp out there to the people who need it and want it. Okay. I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to think it's a fantasy, but I don't think so. I think we're that close. You're not going to have that problem with pharma soon, the Big Pharma. You're not going to have that problem with all these lobbyists soon. because if Trump is doing what he says he's doing, and I believe he is, and I've been watching very closely, these people are going down. The deep state is, the swamp is being drained, and the deep state is being revealed. These people are going to jail. There is a huge revolution going on as we speak. I don't know how much you're up to date with what's going on behind the scenes and what the news isn't telling the people, okay?
Yeah.
And you need to understand that there is a revolution going on. There's a civil war, and Trump is the head battle of that. And there's a very, very slight possibility, I don't think it's going to end up this way, but there's a very slight possibility it could end up in the streets. But in either event, it's going to be a quick war. No one ever dreamed, I never dreamed, and I've been in this battle since 1999. I have never dreamed the thought of the idea that we'd ever come to that point. I thought the world would come to an end and God would bring judgment before we come to the point of taking these people down, because this is a huge machine. Eisenhower spoke about it. Kennedy spoke about it. They are well constructed and fed. They control the world. Okay, and this has been going on since the turn from into the 19th century. Okay, so it's been going on for a long time, and it goes back thousands of years actually. But as far as we're concerned, in modern times, so this is about to go down, and there's no doubt in my mind or heart anymore. I never thought I'd say that, but we are ready to take them down, and we're ready to fill that void of power that's going to come out. People have to be educated and ready. So we could create a whole new thing. Right now, assault. Now is the time to go into the battlefield. Take them out now.
I concur. I mean, sometime you ought to listen to one of my shows, right, Roger? So, but an educated public is a forearmed and forewarned public, okay? So I concur. We're going to start with that process tomorrow. All right.
Well, if you want to give them a free education, we don't charge for our membership. People can come, and the only requirement to take our free test is to become a member, and they can leave our membership anytime they want. But we offer a free education, and we offer a higher education.
It's very good. It's very good.
You can never be too educated, is what I say.
That's right.
Yep. And so, but as far as what I'm hearing, everything is workable, doable, and needs to be aggressive, and we're going to do that. Okay.
I think
you are the perfect people to have in this role. So thank you.
Before, I think the intention that I had for this call, which we achieved and then some, is, and if there was something from the outset that I wanted to make concrete among us, is that by having the National Liberty Alliance come on board and explain these things to us, is that we are standing on the firmest of grounds here. So that's
right.
That.
Well, that's the key thing. You've got to give the people the backbone, okay? They're just like we got to give the sheriff the backbone, we got to give the people the backbone.
Exactly.
And that is understanding the law around whatever it is that they're doing. In this case, they're trying to get medical help, generally speaking. But they're trying to get medical help, and we have to build around that. That argument to give them the backbone, the power, the muscles to step up for their rights because they know what they are.
Right.
Well, what we're doing here also is educating people to take back, their own bodies. Okay, take back their own health, take back their own concepts of thinking. Okay, and that's been steadily eroded. Since I was briefed on 9/11 when the attack came, I've watched a steady erosion of people being able to think for themselves. All right, so I'm thrilled with what you folks have told me, and I can't wait. Like I say, I think education is everything, and we're on the cusp of turning this thing around. Okay, this is the first product that's been truly revolutionary in years. Okay, since prohibition was lifted. Okay, so this is what we have, and this is where we're going, and we're on the cutting edge, I think, of this thing. So I'm going to use my resources, my other corporation, and I think that we can combine all of this to get an effective database out there, a data dump, as I love to call it. Okay, so and I'd like to make that offer too. Anytime my group can help your folks on the alliance, hey, by all means, let's get that symbiotic relationship going. All right.
Well, John and I will probably be customers. We're patient. You don't have to convince us. We already know what we need.
Get a little closer to your mic. You're hard to hear, Gerard.
I'm going to have to go in a couple of minutes here. I didn't expect this to go over 2 hours.
No.
I just said John and I will probably become patients because we have needs too. Out here.
I was going to make the suggestion that with a partnership that we get everyone from the National Liberty Alliance who's a member to become CannaSense members, and likewise. I mean, that would push us well over the 14,000.
There you go. There you go. And
absolutely. That'd be a great idea.
Well, before we wrap up, guys, I know Ron had to jump off, and Fridays are really difficult for him, so I'll probably be in the Slack a little bit later this evening so we can discuss maybe moving our conference calls to a different day and different time to kind of accommodate him a little bit.
If anything, a couple hours earlier, I had kind of talked to him about that. It's just like the crunch time for him is 5 o'clock, but 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock Pacific time would work if that would work for you guys.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll discuss all that in the Slack. This May, I'm going to have to re-listen to this audio. This will be distributed to our consultant and to our friends out in California, and I might have to edit it or tweak it a little bit, but I'm actually considering taking this call and distributing it to the entire collective, which I think would be just a lightning bolt of confidence in what our rights are.